Hello, I'm Peter Lancett. Welcome to the Lancett Hypnosis podcast, where we'll be looking at all things related to trance work, transformation, and anything and everything that can help you change and transform your life to become the ideal you. All right, so that's who we are. Let's get started. Let's get this show on the road. Now, first of all, this is the very first podcast in this series. I'm not even sure it's a series. I think it's probably going to go on forever. So I do need to just explain one or two things first. Because we deal with hypnosis, I deal with trance work, in other words, things that involve people going into a trance, into an altered state of consciousness, like hypnosis. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to explain what I mean when I talk about the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, and how being able to connect with the unconscious mind while keeping the conscious mind out of the way so that it doesn't become a distraction, so that it doesn't become a contradiction, can help you change your life and become the ideal you. Now, you've probably noticed that this podcast has a very long and strange title. So let's go through it. Hypnosis, hypnotherapy, self-hypnosis, shamanism and alchemy for change transformation. How to become the ideal you. Now, that last part, how to become the ideal you, that's who I am. That's what I do all the time for people. I've been involved in alternate states of reality, let's call it that, for many, many decades of my life. And hypnosis is an altered state of consciousness. Now, here's the thing. If you were to ask 100 hypnotists what the definition of hypnosis is, you'd get 100 different answers. Now, I didn't make that up. That came from a master hypnotist, Freddie Jacquin, and I heard him say that many, many times, and I think he's right. We all have a different idea what hypnosis is. But I keep it simple. As far as I'm concerned, it is the art of finding a way to make suggestions to the unconscious mind, not the conscious mind, we don't want that listening in, to the unconscious mind, so that we can program the unconscious mind to bring about the changes, the transformations in our life that we would like to make, to become a different person. Okay, so that's how I see hypnosis. It is choosing to work within an altered state of consciousness. Now, obviously, hypnotherapy uses hypnosis to do that very thing. Now, hypnosis, we can do it for fun. I love doing street hypnosis, for example. I do get a kick out of it. I do find it highly amusing and really interesting. And people that work with it, people who volunteer to become subjects, and they all have a great experience. And I always leave people with something really good, something that's positive that I install within their lives that will carry them forward for a better purpose. Hypnotherapy is the process of using hypnosis to make changes that someone is finding difficult to make for themselves. So, for example, if you're a smoker and I have to say, I am the stop smoking hypnotist. One session with me and it's done. You'll never smoke again, guaranteed. Zoom or in person. I have clients all over the world, testimonials everywhere to prove that this is the case. One session and it's done. But that's because I use hypnosis. And I use it in this way. I use it to bypass the conscious mind and make a suggestion to the unconscious mind, maybe more than one suggestion, that allows it to release the smoking habit. But I always install something positive in its place to help the person that wants to make the change go forward. So you come to see me, you're a smoker. By the time you leave my office or leave the Zoom session, you're a non-smoker. That's hypnotherapy. Or I have clients come to me that maybe, I usually get this in spring, that fear of flying, I want to go on holiday with the family, but my fear of flying is getting worse and worse and worse. I don't even think I could get on a plane. I don't even think I want to go to the airport. So we deal with that. You come in here as a person that has a fear of flying for whatever reason. We don't need to find the cause, but we can do. And and you leave my office as someone that is happy to fly. In other words, there's been a change. Now, self-hypnosis in the title of this podcast. Self-hypnosis is something that we do all the time. If you are a smoker and you have that smoking habit, and you've had it for a long time and you've tried to change, the reason that you have that habit is that at some point you hypnotized yourself into wanting to smoke. Instead of having to have your conscious mind tell you, go on, have a cigarette, you get the unconscious mind to do it. And it does it in the background, and you don't know how it's going on, but you know that automatically at certain points in a day, you're picking up cigarettes and you're lighting a cigarette and you're smoking a cigarette. You can actually finish the cigarette without even realizing that you smoked it. It's like, crikey, that's gone quickly. But anyway, self-hypnosis, if you learn how to make these positive changes yourself, if you learn how to bypass your conscious mind and actually make suggestions to your unconscious mind, then you can become your own alchemist. You can become your own change master. You can make all of the changes in your life that you want to make and do them easily, effortlessly. And I always teach people who come to see me self-hypnosis. You know, obviously we can go into it deeper and deeper and deeper, but I always give people self-hypnosis tools to help them move on whilst they've become the new you, the new ideal person that they wanted to be. I like to have tools for them that they can take away that can actually amplify that change and allow it to grow and grow with each day that follows. So self-hypnosis is a great tool. Now, you may find it strange that I've put in this title, Shamanism and Alchemy for Change Transformation. Well, first of all, shamanism. Shamanism is an alternative way of living. It accesses altered states of reality as well as altered states of consciousness, but it allows the shaman to enter altered states of reality. Now, you don't have to become a shaman to use shamanic technique. And these different altered states of reality, these non-ordinary realities, that's a term that comes, well, I first heard of it from a writer called Carlos Castaneda, and he wrote things like books like Tales of Power about shamanic experience in Central America. But shamanism allows you to access all of these non-ordinary states of reality where you can find all the resources that you will ever need to make whatever change you need to make for yourself, for other people, to help other people. Shamanic practitioners nearly always are there to help other people, or even to help the entire community that you're living within. Shamanic practice and the people that practice shamanism in these communities, this is what they do. They do work for themselves. They gain power. They make changes for themselves. They do that for people who come to them and need their help for change. And they also do that for their communities, where a community is feeling somewhat negative or not going in the way that it wants to, or things are happening within the community that are not functional for that community. The shaman can find out the reason and what resources need to be implemented to make the change by accessing these states of non-ordinary consciousness, to take the shaman into states of non-ordinary reality where the shaman will find those resources. I'm not going to go into too much detail here. We'll probably talk about that in much more detail in another podcast. And then I mentioned this word alchemy. People often, even to this day, think of alchemy as something that represents some medieval playful activity of the idea of changing base metal into gold, changing lead into gold. I'm not going to suggest that can't be done. Let's face it, even with the science that we have in this world, we can turn coal into diamonds. So let's not say that you can't change lead into gold. But that's not what we're talking about. Alchemy literally means any change, transformation. Any change, transformation that you want to make for yourself personally will involve a process that we can describe as being alchemy. This idea of finding the way to program yourself to make that change so that the person you are today transforms into the person you want to be tomorrow. Now, I don't mean today and tomorrow. I mean, sometimes it can take, a little longer than that, the transformational process. But provided that you know how to go about making that change happen for yourself, or if you're a therapist, to happen for other people, then that is alchemy. You're making a change. I will say this, that change is more than a superficial change. You can ask anyone, for example, I keep using smoking, but it's an easy one for me to describe. Anyone who was a smoker that manages to make that change transformation and become a non-smoker, ask them a few months down the track to look back on the person they were and then think about the person they are now. It's not just that they no longer smoke, they will understand that there have been changes in the way they live, and the changes that they've made affect other areas of their life. The way that other people will react with them will change as well. And that's noticeable because of the change that they've made in themselves. We're going to talk about that in another podcast in more detail too. So all of this is about how to become the ideal you. Change transformation, hypnosis, hypnotherapy, self-hypnosis. Oh my gosh, how powerful that is once you learn how to use it properly. And shamanism, to go even further into unconscious and non-ordinary states of reality to find resources that you can have access to make those alchemical change transformations that allow you to become the ideal you. Now, obviously, that's taken quite a while, hasn't it, to go through the title of this podcast, but we are going to cover all of those areas. And, with some podcasts, especially when I have guests with me, which is going to happen quite a bit, we'll be talking about things that are not even mentioned in the title of that, other alternate ways of making transformation and change for positive reasons and positive purposes. So I did say at the beginning that I'm going to discuss the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. So I'll keep it simple, and other people may have other ideas and things that they could add into this, but I don't want to take too long with this recording and this podcast for you because it is an introductory one. And so the conscious mind then is the mind in the front of your mind. In other words, it's your face on the world. It represents who you see yourself as in any given moment. The conscious mind is your current identity then. It makes decisions. It makes choices. It analyzes things. It's good at those things. We need the conscious mind. I mean, honestly, we couldn't survive without it. Even though I'm going to discuss how powerful the unconscious mind is, without the conscious mind and without them working together, you don't go very far. But the conscious mind is very, very limited in what it can do. Academic research in the late 1950s, I think it was 1957, where the results came out where the researchers discovered that the conscious mind can literally only handle 7 plus or minus 2, depending on, how stressful the circumstances might be, but 7 pieces of information at any one time. Now, 7, it's not much, is it? If you think about all the things going on in your life all around you, your eyes are taking notice of things, even in your peripheral vision, as well as the things you're focusing on right in front of you. You're hearing, you're listening to things. These things need to be processed. What are you going to say? What are you thinking? All of these things. But even more, if your conscious mind makes the decision, makes this choice, for example, that you want to get up out of the chair that you're sitting in and walk to the far side of the room. Well, that's great. It's a great decision. But your conscious mind, that can only handle 7 pieces of information at any one time, isn't going to carry you across to that other room. It's not even going to get you out of the chair. You, at some point in your life, will have taught your unconscious mind how to get up out of a chair, stay balanced, and walk. So basically, you can imagine that the conscious mind then is like the captain of the ship. It makes the decisions, it makes the choices, but the unconscious mind is the entire crew of that ship that works in tandem. All the parts of that crew work in tandem with each other to get to that place that the captain has said you need to go. So let's just think about it. If you got up out of a chair and decided that you were going to walk to the far side of a room, or if you were outdoors, you were going to walk, I don't know, wherever it is you're going to walk, you don't get up and then suddenly say, oh, crikey, to walk, I'd better move my left foot forward. Okay, that works. I'd better move my right foot forward. And in the meantime, I've got to work out the weight distribution in each leg, where my body's positioned, what I'm seeing, so that I can, and what I'm hearing, so that I can manage my balance and not fall over while I do it. You ever watch a little baby just about learning to walk, and you'll see it can't do all those things. And the reason for this is when we learn something, when we choose to learn something, we choose to learn it consciously. And at first, we consciously try to learn the process. Again, we'll use that example of the baby. A baby sees the adults around it, mum and dad, whatever. They can go wherever they want. But when the baby wants to move and be somewhere else in the room, it has to scream or cry or whatever to try to get attention because it can't do it. Maybe it can crawl, but that's not the same. That's a very limited process. It wants to walk like the adults that it sees, like mum and dad, brother or sister, whatever it is. So you'll see it pulling itself up on a piece of furniture perhaps, and then taking those one step, two step, I don't know how far it'll get, 1, 2 or 3, and boom, it falls over. And sometimes it'll cry with frustration, but it'll keep on trying and keep on trying. Why? Because consciously it understands that there is great value in being able to work. So it's going to continue to try to do this consciously. But at some point, the unconscious mind will have understood that this is something important to that baby. The baby really wants to do it. So the conscious mind will start processing the way that the child needs to act in order to be able to walk. And then suddenly that day comes when little baby is now a toddler and you've got to run about looking after toddler. But you can see how this works. It's the same with playing an instrument. I have guitars and things. But you choose to learn to play a guitar or something new within the guitar structure, and you do it consciously. And at first it seems very frustrating and very difficult. How the heck am I ever going to play like Jimmy Page? Well, I have to tell you, I don't play like Jimmy Page, and I never had an intention to do so. I wish I could, but it's not worth the effort. And that's something else we'll come to. But what I do is I keep practicing, slowly, bit by bit, slowly, making mistakes, getting frustrated and doing it. But eventually I realized, sometimes I wake up the next morning, pick up a guitar, and what was really difficult the previous evening is now flowing really well. It happens all the time. It happens to all of us. When we want to learn something, when we give a value to it, we will hand it over to the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind, by the way, doesn't have this limitation of only being able to handle 7 plus or minus 2 pieces of information at any one time. It's limitless. It literally is limitless. There is no limit to all the things that it can do and process and make happen simultaneously for you. Think about driving. If you've ever learned to drive in a manual car, I learned in a manual car. I was desperate. I wanted to drive. I was 17 years old, and there you go. First lesson. I get in the car. I'm very excited. But suddenly it's like, oh my God, there's all these things. I've got to make sure I'm in the right gear. There are 3 pedals down here. Then there are mirrors everywhere. And when I'm actually out into traffic, by the way, I've got to balance the clutch pedal with the accelerator so that the car doesn't jump up and down the road or just stall. So I've got to get that happening. And at the same time, I've got to be making sure that we're safe, that it's safe to enter the traffic flow, that I'm keeping a good distance from the vehicle in front of me, that I'm watching for the warning lights and the traffic lights that are telling me to stop. I need to know how to slow down at a junction, all of these things, and make sure that I'm safe, that I'm not going off the road and killing people. I've got to concentrate on the road. At the end of that first lesson, I felt like I'd done a day's work. I loved it. I was exhilarated. I enjoyed it. But wow, that was hard work. But like I said, on all the other things, I persisted with these lessons, and it got easier and easier. And I was handing over the process to the unconscious mind. How do I know that's happened? Well, for those of you who do drive, you'll have probably had this experience. At some point, after you've passed your driving test, and there you go, you're driving away, at some point, you will have driven home from somewhere, maybe you've driven home from work, and as you stop the car, you'll have this realization, I can't remember actually driving back. I can't remember any part of that drive. God, I've gone through green lights, traffic lights. Could they have been red? Could they have been green? Wow, what happened? Because your mind's been somewhere else, or you could have had someone in the passenger seat you were talking to. You could be fiddling around, changing the music, or whatever it is you're doing. So who's driven the car? Well, you have, but it's your unconscious mind that's taken over that process, which is why you can't remember it. Your conscious mind's been somewhere else, while your unconscious mind did that job for you. So that's the difference between the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. Yes, we need both of them. And when the two of them are acting together in tandem, synchronized, wow, how amazing your life becomes in those areas that they're working in together. But to learn something, to make a change, to process a change, it's the unconscious mind that needs to be told to do it. I hope that's made sense to everyone. And I hope that when I mention the conscious and unconscious mind in subsequent podcasts, you'll remember this and understand exactly what I've said. But for now, I'm going to leave it there, because now you understand what these podcasts are all going to be about: altered states of reality, altered states of consciousness that allow you to make all the change transformations you want to make to become the ideal you. So I'm going to say goodbye for now, and I'll see you on the next podcast. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for listening in.